Namaste everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing a review of C.M. Niroula's The Forgotten Story. Before I start this review, I would like to ask you to please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing to my channel. It really helps me a lot. Thank you. Let's get right into it. So, The Forgotten Story is by C.M. Niroula, and I'm going to read what the back says so you can get a little understanding of what the story is before I get into the big brunt of my review. The Forgotten Story is a journey into the past, a journey to uncover the stories that have been lost to the sands of time. This book is an attempt to bring light to the tales of people, places, and events that have been overlooked and undervalued. It is a tribute to those who have forgotten and a reminder of the importance of preserving history. Throughout the book, you will come across a diverse range of subjects and life experiences, from the struggles of marginalized communities to the triumphs of unsung heroes. You will read about the lives of ordinary people who lived an extraordinary life, and learn about events that have shaped our world but have become overlooked by the annals of history. First of all, I'd like to say that I really enjoyed reading this book. Out of all the books that I've reviewed so far, I think I actually enjoyed reading this the most. It was really, obviously it's very short. I think it's about 100 pages long, and it took me about an hour to read. And it was really easy to read. It was really easy to comprehend for me, and I really enjoyed reading it. Some of the other books that I've reviewed so far have been a lot harder to read, a lot harder to understand. But this one was pretty easy to understand, so for somebody who's just starting to get into the history of the former Bhutanese refugees and stories about refugees in general, I would say this book is a great place to start. It is written in first person, which I know can be a big turnoff for some people, but I think that it's well enough done that it really wasn't a big problem for me. Okay, before I get started with the other parts of my review, I'd really like to applaud Mr. Niroula for writing this book. First of all, it's already hard enough. It's very difficult to find books that are written by former Bhutanese refugees, so having this one that's written in English that's really easy to read is amazing for preserving the history of our culture and what happened to us, and for making sure that future generations learn about it and know where to find resources so that they can read about it. And it's great for even Americans or people who don't know what happened to us to start to really understand it from a personal perspective. So I'd like to applaud him. Anyways, so let's get started with the big part of the review. For me, as great as it was having a book that was easy to read and simple to understand, it was still very meh to me. I read it because I was reading it. There really wasn't anything keeping me going from chapter to chapter. So for me to explain that, let me tell you about the structure of the book. So there are 15 chapters in this book, and each one of the chapters is its own little story. And there are poems scattered throughout. I can't really comment on the poems. I'm not a poet, and I'm not somebody who enjoys poetry very much. But from the poems that I read, they were enjoyable enough. I just don't have the mind to understand poetry, so I'll comment on the written stories part. So as I was reading them, I was thinking it'd be really great if they were in a kind of chronological order. One part that I'd like to mention in this is when he talks about his wife. So there is a chapter where he talks about the 4th of July, Independence Day, and he obviously mentions his wife in there. And then in the next chapter, he talks about their love story, and I would have really liked those chapters to be in like the reverse order, like the love story first and then the 4th of July episode. Not the episode, the 4th of July story, because that gives you kind of a context into like his love story and like all that stuff. So I don't know, that would have been really nice. I'm also a really big sucker for a love story. I love love stories. I love romances. I think they're just so fun. And his like love story was so cute. I was reading it and I was like, oh my god, that was amazing. I think that chapter was actually my favorite chapter out of the whole book. But yeah, a bit more like chronologically ordered stories would have been really nice for me. And then let's talk about the title. So the title is obviously The Forgotten Story, and I think that a better title would have been The Forgotten Stories, because he talks about a lot of different stories in this, not all that are his own. Some of them are other people's stories. And I think The Forgotten Stories would have been like a lot better like to explain what the book has in it, because it's not just one story. It's one story. It is 15 individual stories that make up the story of his life, or the story of there are a couple of chapters that aren't about him, that are about other people that make up their lives. So I think The Forgotten Stories would have been a much more better encompassing title. Okay, so on the other point, it's really difficult to get invested into the story, mainly because they're kind of scattered all across the place, because some of them are about like coming to the United States and the experiences of coming to the United States for the first time, the cultural differences in the United States. He talks a lot about like different idioms and sayings. And as I was reading this book, I realized how confusing that must be to somebody who like studied the formal English language but never really studied the slang that we use. Like, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Mouth might be really hard for somebody to understand. What's another idiom? I don't know, it'll come to me eventually. I'm just forgetting right now. But he talks about that and how he was so confused a lot of the times because he didn't understand the context of what people were saying. And that really made me realize how difficult it must be being somebody who's like learning formal English and then coming to the United States, where obviously slang is used a lot. I think that the average literacy rate of most adults is 2 to 3 grade levels between their highest level of education. And that's because a lot of adults don't read, but it's also because we don't really use formal English a lot. If I asked anybody in the audience what an Oxford comma is, you'd all be like, huh? A comma that was invented in Oxford? When in reality, it's something that is completely different. So that really made me realize and understand the struggles of new Americans coming to America and trying to live their lives, obviously, and trying to understand the culture around them. So I thought that was really amazing. But with that, let's get to chapter 12. For me, chapter 12 was the most confusing what is happening right now chapter out of the whole book. So there's a mermaid, and the mermaid kind of comes out of nowhere and sort of preaches about like taking care of the earth and stuff. And I was really confused the whole entire chapter. I was like, huh? What? Just cause like that's so random. So I think that like chapter, that was my biggest thing that I didn't like about the book, chapter 12. I think that chapter was just really confusing to me, and myself, obviously. I was like, where in the world did that come from? I am so confused right now. So yeah, I think that is about everything that I have to say on the book. Overall, it was a really good read. I would rate it probably like a 3 out of 5. I really didn't like the writing style that much, and chapter 12 obviously was a big thing for me to get past. I think, so for all the books I review, I like write notes separately, and then I have this notebook where I like write down an outline of the script, because I'm trying to get like off of the habit of annotating in my books. So I think my like chapter 12 note was WTF is chapter 12. Before I close off this review, I would like to talk about, I think, what is the most important this is me being very joking. What I like to think is one of the most important takeaways from this book, and one of my most favorite quotes. So it comes in the first chapter when he is going to talk to Dhanapati Ba, and he ponders, I wonder how many international issues have been settled over a cup of tea. And I think that's really funny. Like a day after I finished reading this book, my little cousin came over, and he's like 2. He's very little. He's a baby, okay? Or he might be 1.5, I'm not sure. But he comes over, and we're having lunch, obviously. And then he's just like, tea, 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 Jia, 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 mana Jia dinu, in his like really baby voice. And I'm like, that is a baby. Why is that baby drinking Jia? And he ended up gulping down like a whole cup of Jia. And I really do think a lot of international issues have been solved because there has been Jia there. So I thought that was really funny, and I was like, that is definitely something I'm gonna take with me later in life. I'm gonna learn how to brew like a really, really, really good like cup of Jia, and I'm gonna solve all the international issues with it. And then before we leave, here is what I think is like the actual biggest takeaway from the book. So this is Dhanapati Ba speaking. Your generation is responsible for deciding when and how to teach. I don't want to share outdated strategies, but I request that you and all community activists take this looming predicament seriously. It is getting late, but not too late. You don't have to wait for a specific time to do the right thing. You can start educating people from now on. Nonetheless, we can still win the lost war and restore our dignity by educating people and preserving our identity. So this comes right after a section where he is like kind of pondering, because this is written in first person obviously. He's kind of talking about how like so much of our culture is being lost, like being in the United States, and for how many generations it is going to remain. And that is the advice that Dhanapati Ba offers. So I'd like to say that like reading and writing books like these are very important to preserving our culture, because this is the only way our culture is going to get preserved. Like Mr. Niroula says on the title, The Forgotten Stories. All stories eventually get forgotten or get turned into myths. There are so many stories that we can talk about when talking about this. But the only thing that remains in the end is written word and like primary sources, and Mr. Niroula is a primary source, and this is written word. So even in 100 years, when my dad and his generation is gone, when I'm gone and my generation, and when my children are gone, this book will remain, and books like this will remain, and it'll show the generations that are there, the generations of our people, our descendants, what happened to us and how much of a struggle it was coming to the United States for the first time, and how much we persevered. So I think we should still continue to write books. We should continue to write books like this, and we should like write more and more and more so that our stories will get told forever. Overall, it was a very good read. It was a very quick read, so if you have some time you'd like to spend reading, I would recommend this book. It's very short, obviously. It's a very nice read, and it's readily available. We got it off of Amazon. So thank you so much for watching, and before you leave, I would like to promote my next book review that's gonna come out probably sometime next week. And that is No Lopin, and yeah, this is the next book that I'm gonna be reviewing, so stay tuned. Thank you so much. Bye. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.